For decades, J.D. Crowe was revered as a bluegrass legend, a banjo virtuoso, and a quiet innovator who reshaped the genre. Yet behind the accolades and the music, whispers and unanswered questions followed him. Rumors circulated about odd disappearances, sealed letters, and strange incidents that bandmates never discussed. Recently, newly released documents and a shocking audio tape have confirmed what fans long suspected but never fully understood. The story of J.D. Crowe is not just one of musical genius. It is a tale of mystery, obsession, and a darkness that lingered far beyond the stage. Early life and first inspirations. James D. Crowe, known to the world simply as J.D., was born in 1937 in Lexington, Kentucky. A quiet boy with a crooked smile and a mind built like a metronome, J.D.'s childhood was less about sports and more about melodies. By age 12, he had built his own banjo from spare parts, and by 13, he was performing in local venues. When he first heard Earl Scruggs, J.D. described it as a lightning bolt, crisp, rolling, unstoppable. That sound became his blueprint, yet Crowe was not a mere imitator. He absorbed, transformed, and crafted his own voice in bluegrass. Rising through the ranks, in 1954, J.D. joined Jimmy Martin's Sunny Mountain Boys, expecting a brief apprenticeship. Instead, it became an intense apprenticeship of fire. Martin was demanding and sometimes brutal, cursing on stage and berating his musicians in front of audiences. Crowe absorbed it all without complaint, learning timing, tone, and stagecraft. Fellow musicians noted that he wasn't loud or flashy, but when he played, it resonated deeply. Every note carried intent. By the late 1960s, J.D. was ready to lead his own band. The Kentucky Mountain Boys formed the foundation of what would eventually become the New South, one of the most influential bluegrass groups in history. The New South and Musical Revolution. The New South's 1975 self-titled album with Rounder Records solidified J.D. Crowe's place in bluegrass history. It blended traditional sound with progressive elements, drums, electric bass, and hints of country fusion. The record was daring, unapologetic, and deeply influential. Crowe's bandmates were not merely collaborators, they were legends in the making. Tony Rice, Ricky Skaggs, and Jerry Douglas were handpicked by Crowe for their talent and musical intuition. J.D.'s leadership was quiet but absolute. He rarely spoke at length, yet his vision shaped every note. Musicians wanted to deliver exactly what he envisioned, drawn by a combination of respect, fear, and awe. The enigma of privacy. Despite his growing influence, J.D. remained elusive. He avoided interviews, seldom gave quotes, and stayed far from the spotlight. Fans and colleagues assumed it was shyness or humility, but others suspected deeper motives. Certain incidents raised eyebrows. An abruptly cancelled 1978 tour, strict bans on visiting his home, and a mysterious woman who appeared at a Georgia concert screaming his full name before security removed her. Crowe never commented, maintaining a stoic presence on stage. Behind his quiet demeanor lurked a mystery few dared to probe, a darkness that hinted something more than mere privacy motivated his distance from public life. The disappearance. In 1981, just as his influence peaked, J.D. Crowe disappeared, not physically, but from public life. He refused to play festivals, record albums, or lead the New South. The band limped along with shifting lineups, but his absence was palpable. Rumors circulated, burnout, illness, or a secret retreat, but none was substantiated. Locals whispered about an unreported fire on his Kentucky property and the woods being cordoned off for months. His abandoned truck was found in Tennessee, stripped clean, with a torn notebook page reading, "I told you not to follow me." Every lead faded into obscurity, leaving fans and colleagues puzzled and unsettled. Whispers and warnings. Former bandmate Doyle Lawson hinted at Crowe's inner struggles. Speaking of demons, JD kept caged. Crowe himself remained silent about the hiatus, famously stating, "Let sleeping dogs lie." But the dogs refused to sleep. Oddities, fire records, isolated sightings, cryptic messages surrounded Crowe, forming a patchwork of unanswered questions. Even years later, those closest to him avoided the topic. His absence was not just professional, it was personal, intentional, and meticulously opaque. Fans sensed a change when he returned to music in the late 1980s. The energy was subdued, the fire dimmed, and the man himself seemed more guarded, as if protecting secrets too heavy to share. A changed musician, J.D. Crowe's return to music brought skill and precision, but the spark that had once defined him was missing. Stage performances were still exceptional, yet his presence carried caution and tension. He evaded every question about his disappearance with jokes or distractions. The mystery of those years hung over him, unspoken but tangible. While the New South continued in some form, it was clear the leadership and creative fire had shifted. Fans debated whether JD's hiatus had altered his genius or simply hidden it behind layers of trauma and secrecy. The truth remained locked behind a wall he refused to breach publicly. The anonymous tip. In 1991, an anonymous postcard arrived at the Lexington Police Department. "Check the basement." No context, no signature. Authorities did not follow up, and the lead was lost to time. For years, speculation remained just that. Rumors and fragments of stories pieced together by those who admired him. Yet the tip symbolized a larger truth. There were parts of J.D. Crowe's life that were deliberately hidden, hints of danger, obsession, and perhaps even criminal or supernatural intrigue. The missing years were not simply a hiatus. They were a carefully guarded secret, one that would not be unveiled until decades later. The dark years. The journal painted a disturbing picture. J.D. was aware of someone or something following him. Entries became increasingly paranoid, documenting sightings and encounters that hinted at threats both human and mysterious. The fire, the abandoned truck, the anonymous threats, they all connected to a period of intense fear and secrecy. Crowe documented meticulously, noting dates, times, and unusual behavior with the precision of a musician keeping rhythm. For fans and historians, the revelation reframed the hiatus not as burnout or withdrawal, but as a survival story, one intertwined with obsession, danger, and perhaps trauma that shaped the rest of his life. Legacy and reflection. D. Crowe returned to music with a changed soul, carrying the weight of experiences most would never understand. His mastery of the banjo remained unquestioned, but the person behind the instrument was forever altered. The journal, now public, casts new light on a life of both brilliance and darkness. Crowe's legacy as a musician is untouchable, but the story behind the legend reveals the human cost of genius, fame, and secrets kept too long. The once quiet man of Kentucky had lived a story far stranger than any fan could imagine, and it leaves an indelible mark on the history of bluegrass. The mystery endures. Even with the journal's revelations, many questions remain. Who or what was following J.D.? What truly occurred during the fire and his vanished years? Why did he guard these secrets so fiercely? While answers may never be fully known, the story reshapes how we understand J.D. Crowe. Not just a masterful musician, but a man whose life was shadowed by fear, obsession, and mystery. His music continues to inspire, but the legend now carries a darker resonance. Some mysteries are never fully solved, and J.D. Crowe's life reminds us that behind every genius, there may lie stories we are not prepared to hear.